Most people never realize why others pull away from them. They assume it's bad luck, wrong timing, different personalities. But psychology tells a quieter truth. People don't move away from you because of what you lack. They move away because of what you are doing without noticing. Carl Jung warned that the most dangerous behaviors are not loud. They are unconscious. And today, we are going to expose one unconscious habit that weakens your presence the moment you enter a room. Not because it makes you immoral, not because it makes you unkind, but because it makes you energetically needy, and humans at a nervous system level detect that instantly. Here is the paradox. The harder you try to be understood, the less people feel you. The harder you try to connect, the weaker your presence becomes. This video is not about manipulation. It's not about tactics or tricks. It's about removing a single internal behavior and letting human psychology do the rest. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most people call it chemistry, or vibes, or attraction. But it is none of those. It is psychological pressure. And the moment you stop creating it, people lean in without knowing why. Let's begin with something uncomfortable. Most humans are unconsciously asking a question in every interaction. Am I accepted here? The moment you start asking that question internally, your nervous system shifts, your voice changes, your timing changes, your eyes search instead of rest, and without a word spoken, people feel it. This is the one thing you must stop doing. Stop seeking emotional permission from others, not verbally, energetically. This does not mean arrogance. It does not mean coldness. It means inner neutrality. Stoicism understood this long before psychology gave it language. The Stoics taught that power begins where dependence ends. Jung went further. He believed that the self becomes attractive only when it is no longer fragmented, when it is no longer chasing reflections of itself in other people. Here is what most people get wrong. They think attraction is created by adding something, better words, better posture, better confidence. But attraction is created by removal. Removing the need to be mirrored. Removing the urge to explain. Removing the habit of proving. When you stop doing this one thing, something strange happens. Your silence becomes heavier. Your words land slower. Your presence feels grounded. People don't know why they feel safe around you. They don't know why they listen more closely. They just do. Because the moment you stop chasing psychological safety from others, you become it. The need for approval does not begin as weakness. It begins as survival. As children, acceptance meant safety. Being understood meant belonging. Silence often meant danger. So the nervous system learned a rule very early. Stay connected, or you are at risk. That rule never leaves the body. It simply matures and hides. By adulthood, it no longer sounds like fear. It sounds like politeness, curiosity, helpfulness, over-explaining. But beneath it is the same question. Am I okay here? Carl Jung called this the false self, the version of you shaped around adaptation instead of truth. Not because you were weak, but because you were attentive. Here is where it becomes dangerous. The moment your sense of safety depends on another person's reaction, your psyche fragments. One part of you is speaking, another part is watching for approval, and fragmentation is felt. Humans don't consciously analyze it, but the nervous system registers it as incongruence. Something is off, not wrong, just unstable. This is why people sometimes say, "I don't know why, but I felt uncomfortable," or "They're nice, but I couldn't relax around them." What they are responding to is not your personality, it is your internal tension. Stoicism warned against this long ago. Epictetus said that if you hand over your peace to the opinions of others, you become their servant. Jung would add, if you outsource your worth, you lose your center. Here is the critical insight. People are drawn to centeredness, not effort. When you seek approval, even subtly, you create emotional gravity pulling outward. But attraction requires gravity pulling inward. This is why those who speak less are often heard more. Why those who explain less are trusted more. Why those who do not chase connection often receive it. They are not better. They are contained. Let's look at how this habit shows up in everyday life. You feel the urge to fill silence. You clarify a point that didn't need clarifying. You soften a statement before it lands. You laugh to signal safety. None of these are wrong, but when they come from fear of disconnection, they drain presence. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, begins the moment we stop negotiating our existence. Not aggressively, not defiantly,
but quietly.
The first thing that happens is discomfort. Not confidence, not power, discomfort. Because for the first time, your nervous system is no longer scanning the room for reassurance. There is no internal question being asked, and the mind doesn't like that. It mistakes neutrality for danger. This is why most people never stop the habit. They return to explaining, softening, seeking micro-approval. Not because it works,
but because it feels familiar.
Jung described this moment as standing between the persona and the self. The persona wants harmony at any cost. The self wants truth, even if it costs harmony. When you stop seeking permission, 3 subtle shifts occur. First, your timing slows. You respond instead of react. Silence no longer feels like a threat. You allow moments to hang without rescuing them. This alone changes how people experience you. Second, your words compress. You say less, but each word carries more weight. Not because you planned it, but because nothing is trying to justify itself. Third, your emotional center moves inward. You are no longer measuring yourself against the room. You are inhabiting yourself. And here is the paradox most people never expect. When you stop trying to be understood, you become easier to understand. Why? Because there is no noise, no inner negotiation, no psychological static. Stoicism calls this apatheia, not emotional numbness, but freedom from compulsion. Jung would call it integration. But here is the part no one talks about. When you make this shift, some people will feel uneasy around you. Not because you are cold, but because you are no longer participating in emotional bargaining. You are not signaling, "Please accept me." And for those who live on that exchange, your neutrality feels like distance. This is where most people panic. They think they are doing something wrong. They feel guilty. They re-enter old patterns. But this phase is a threshold. Jung warned that individuation often feels like isolation, not because you are alone, but because you are no longer diluted. Let me be precise here. You are not withdrawing. You are consolidating. And consolidation always changes relational dynamics. Attraction is not a behavior. It is a response. People are not drawn to what tries to pull them. They are drawn to what does not need them. This is not emotional coldness. It is psychological stability. When you stop seeking permission, your nervous system settles into coherence. There is no outward reach, no inward collapse, and coherence is felt. Humans are wired to attune to regulation. A calm system stabilizes the anxious one. A grounded presence gives others permission to relax. This is why people begin to open up around you without invitation. Why conversations deepen without effort. Why silence feels full instead of awkward. Jung understood this through the concept of projection. When you are internally whole, others unconsciously project their unintegrated parts onto you. Not because you asked, but because you can hold it. This is the strange magnetism people call energy. But it is not mystical. It is neurological and psychological. Here is a key distinction. Seeking approval creates pressure. Grounded presence creates space. And humans move towards space instinctively. Stoicism framed this as sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man is worth only as much as the things he cannot be disturbed by. When you are not disturbed by acceptance or rejection, you become an anchor. But let's be clear, this does not mean people will always like you. It means their response becomes honest. Some will feel relief. Some will feel challenged. Some will disappear. And that is not loss. That is filtration. You are no longer emotionally available to everyone, only to what resonates. This is why attraction sharpens instead of widens. The habit doesn't announce itself. It disguises itself as courtesy, as humor, as clarity. That is why it survives. Here are the most common signs you are still seeking permission, quietly, unconsciously. You feel the urge to explain your intention before someone misunderstands you. You soften statements that don't need softening. You add extra words after making a clear point. You feel tension during silence and rush to fill it. None of this makes you weak. It makes you attentive. But attention without grounding becomes self-erasure. Jung believed the psyche leaks energy when it is divided. Every time you monitor how you are being received, energy moves outward. So how do you interrupt the pattern without becoming rigid? You do not add control. You remove compulsion. Here is the practice. When the urge to explain arises, pause. Not to suppress, but to observe. Ask nothing. Fix nothing. Just stay present. This pause rewires the nervous system. At first, it will feel like something is missing. That something is the habit. Silence becomes a mirror. And most people fear mirrors. Stoicism trained this muscle through voluntary restraint. Not speaking when unnecessary. Not reacting when provoked. Not defending when not attacked. Not because silence is superior, but because choice is. Jung would say this is where the shadow retreats. The shadow feeds on unconscious reaction. When you bring awareness, it loses force. Another key practice: stop preemptive reassurance. Do not reassure others that you are friendly, kind, or harmless. Let them discover it. When you remove emotional advertising, your presence becomes experiential, and experiences are remembered. Now let's step back and see the bigger picture. When you stop seeking permission, something profound begins to happen. First, your identity solidifies. You no longer fold yourself into the expectations of others. You stop negotiating your value. Your inner compass becomes the measure of your choices. Second, your relationships change. Some people will drift away, not because you did anything wrong, but because they depended on the old dynamic. Those who stay are drawn to authenticity, not performance. They are drawn to presence, not reassurance. Third, your energy magnetizes naturally. This is not about charm, charisma, or tactics. It is about psychological resonance. When you are centered, grounded, and undivided, people feel it. They lean in, they open up, they trust without pressure. Fourth, you experience internal freedom. The fear of judgment loses power. The need to prove yourself evaporates. You respond instead of react. You live aligned, not contracted. Jung called this individuation, the integration of the conscious and unconscious into a whole, stable self. Stoics called it sovereignty, the mastery of the inner citadel. And here is the final paradoxical truth. The moment you stop trying to be attractive, you become magnetic. The moment you stop trying to control perception, you influence naturally. The moment you stop seeking permission, you are finally free to be yourself. This freedom is subtle, but it changes everything. Your voice carries weight. Your silence carries meaning. Your presence becomes a force without effort. So what do you do next? 1. Notice the pattern of seeking approval in real time. 2. Pause before responding. Observe, don't fix. 3. Sit with discomfort, it signals growth. 4. Integrate. Don't perform, ground yourself internally. This is not a one-time act. It is a practice, a lifetime process. But as Jung reminded us, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. And that awakening is magnetic. It is quiet. It is unshakable.
It is real.
Remember, people feel drawn to the grounded, the whole, the internally sovereign. Not because you try to impress. Not because you chase approval. But because you stopped. The journey begins the moment you let go. And it never truly ends. If this video resonated with you, subscribe for more insights into psychology, self-mastery, and the quiet power of presence. Comment below with one habit you're ready to stop and notice how it changes your energy. Share this with someone who needs a reminder. Real attraction begins inside. And remember, the journey to inner authority starts with a single pause.